Good afternoon, everyone. We'll just wait for a few seconds for everyone to come in for this informative, interactive webinar that we have set for you for today. In Disaster Resiliency, it is your business. My name is Jesus Padilla. I am the Assistant Director at the Florida SBDC at FIU, and I want to thank you for attending today's webinar. Just some general housekeeping items. This is a recorded webinar. All participants will be receiving today's presentation, recording, along with the useful links from our distinguished panel members. And then at the same time, we're going to be providing any YouTube links, additional links to enhance the conversation with our participants. In doing so, this is a good opportunity to introduce yourself, what type of business you have, what industry you're in. So like that, we get to know more about you, who you are, and if there's any questions, strongly encourage you to put your information in the chat. So like that, we'll be more than happy to modify and moderate those questions for you. So without further ado, we have Chief Grant Muser from the City of Miami Fire Department. And would you like to introduce yourself, Chief?
Good afternoon. This is Grant Musser, the Assistant Fire Chief for the City of Miami and also the Emergency Manager for the entire city. And with me, I have my Emergency Management Coordinator,
Victoria Geraldo.
Thank you. And now also we have Eileen Fernandez from the SBA.
Good afternoon, everybody. As Jesus said, Eileen Fernandez. I've been with the SBA for a little bit over 6 years. I do outreach and marketing. Also have a disaster portfolio that I handle, as well as business opportunity contracting for the SBA. I've worn a lot of different hats in the small time that I've been here at SBA. Can't believe it's been 6 years. Just grateful to be here with you all and looking forward to the conversation.
Also, we have Melissa Ortiz from the Office of City of Miami Mayor Eileen Higgins.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Melissa Ortiz, and I work on the Strategic Initiatives and Economic Growth team for the Mayor's Office. I'm glad to be here today with you all. I oversee her Elevate Small Business Program. I've put in our website in the chat, and thank you all for being here today.
And last but not least, Ms. Annie Perez from the Director of Chief Procurement Officer for the City of Miami.
Good afternoon, everyone. So excited to be here. Today does mark the first day of hurricane season, so this is a very appropriate webinar. I am the Chief Procurement Officer and Director of Procurement. I also serve as the Logistics Chief for the Emergency Operations Center.
And then last but not least, and today's presenter, Brian Van Hook, Regional Director of the Florida SBDC at FIU.
Hey, everybody. Thank you, Jesus, for the introduction. And I'm really excited because we have like a rock star panel, guys. I know we're not all disaster nerds or hurricane nerds, but the panelists that we have here today, this is like the people you want to know if there's a hurricane or a disaster, or if you're looking to do some opportunities like after a disaster or hurricane. So I'm just really appreciate Mayor Higgins and the city for the partnership, also with the SBA District Office, because these are our partners that we work with really closely, in the event that there is something, knock on wood, that we're here June 1st. But just want to thank them for their, partnership on this webinar. And as Jesus said, we are going to record this. So we know that everybody is focused on like summer travel, where are they going to go? We were talking about like Disney travel, like before you guys logged in. But, we do live in South Florida. We do live in Miami. There are disasters, there are hurricanes. So we really just appreciate you guys taking a couple of minutes to participate in the webinar. And we will record this so that you can watch it later on if something is, brewing in the Gulf or in the Caribbean, that we can kind of get prepared. And then I'm going to save some time at the end for questions. But as Jesus mentioned, please, please, please let us know who you are in the chat. Post in any information. If you have any questions, don't be shy. And like I said, we have a Rockstar panel, so they can feel free to jump in if they have any like comments or anything they want to talk about. So with that, we'll get into it. Just real quick about me, who is this presenter? What does this guy know? That's actually my action photo that I show my kids that I was once cool. That's actually the BP oil spill. Like Eileen, I basically have some previous experience in the United States Senate. I worked on the Senate Small Business Committee. Also previously worked at the Department of Commerce. And so actually that was when they had the BP oil spill and got to fly in that really cool helicopter in South Louisiana and go visit fishermen and shrimpers that were impacted by the oil spill. I'm wearing my suit jacket because I had meetings with bankers right after. So I figured I'd be overdressed for the shrimpers, then be an underdressed for the bankers. And so it kind of worked out. But I have over 20 years of experience working on disaster recovery, economic development. So that's everything from like Hurricane Katrina all the way to like Midwest flooding, New York City flooding, all the hurricanes and disasters we've had here in South Florida. So I'm happy to use that experience to help you and your business get better prepared. The focus of today's webinar is on helping you understand risks that are unique to your business and how you can mitigate them. We also want to identify operations and personnel that are critical to those recovery efforts, and then also share key resources that's going to help you jumpstart your disaster planning. And I would just say again, the folks that are on the panel today, these are all folks that have like key programs or opportunities that will be helpful for you, like if a disaster is coming or after a disaster. So definitely like make notes of the folks that are on the panel. So before we get into it, I just want to mention about disaster preparedness. When you're building a resilient business, that involves a number of different things. That's risk management, contingency planning, emergency preparedness, disaster recovery planning for your IT, and also succession planning. That's something that is lost along with a lot of businesses because you have a key employee or yourself. And a lot of times you'll have somebody that'll leave the business and find a better opportunity. Unfortunately, sometimes you have somebody that has an accident or passes away. And those are key folks that are like vital to your business. So whether you need like a full business continuity plan, whether you need like a disaster recovery plan, or you just need like a disaster checklist, everything you can do is going to help you enhance your preparedness. And really, it's all about taking like small steps today that's going to help you to have your business better prepared tomorrow. Don't overthink it, guys. Don't get like drowned in overthinking like how many things you have to do, and it needs to be a 50-page business continuity plan. We really want this presentation and the resources we're going to give you to be very actionable, that you can like kind of work on some things and kind of get your business better prepared. So I always start the presentation talking about hurricanes. Obviously, we mentioned this is June 1st. It's the start of hurricane season in the Atlantic. This is a slide from Hurricane Katrina, lower Ninth Ward. So this is what everybody pictures when you have, disasters. This is what everybody's focused on. And we're going to talk a lot about hurricane preparedness today. But because we work with a lot of businesses from SBDC, I also want to throw this out there. We live in South Florida, guys. Road construction is everywhere. I passed road construction, closed roads this morning coming into my office. This is actually something, in addition to a hurricane or a larger scale disaster, this is something that really could impact operations for business and could actually be like a business killer because most small businesses, you're not Walmart, you're not Target, you're not like a big Fortune 500 company. You're a real small business and you have smaller margins, smaller bottom lines, smaller employees and staff. And so these are things that can really impact your operations and hurt your business. So I want you to think about, obviously we're talking about hurricanes today, but we also want you to think about other business interruptions that could impact your business. This is just like a timeline that just shows you some of the bigger hurricanes and disasters. And you can see pretty much every 3 years, every 4 years, there's like a major disaster. I do want to point out, obviously, we've been very lucky the last few years to not have a disaster here in Miami and Miami-Dade County in terms of like a hurricane. But I do want to point out that you had a couple years like 2004, that was basically 4 hurricanes that hit Florida. Obviously, 2024, we had 3 hurricanes, including Hurricane Milton, that hit Florida. So it only takes 1 hurricane to really cause major damage, but also you have some years that you have multiple hurricanes that have impacted the state of Florida. So definitely want to be mindful of those. Also that they're not all hurricanes, it's additional disasters as well. Business continuity is important. I did throw a couple of stats up there for you guys in terms of businesses that see catastrophic data loss. 43% never reopen and 40% close within 2 years. It could cost you a lot of, in terms of your day-to-day business, lost productivity, decreased customer confidence, decreases your finances. the Institute for Business and Home Safety. An incident like this could cost businesses about $3,000 a day. Like I mentioned, if you're a big business, you can shrug that off. But if you're a small business, $3,000 a day is a big deal. So you really want to pay attention to it and make some of those preparedness steps. And then also businesses, like 2/3 of businesses that were surveyed by the Ad Council, they did not have an emergency plan on their books for their business. So you definitely want to be proactive, be prepared. Don't just wait until something is like right outside of the state or right outside of Miami-Dade County to get prepared. And then I did throw in there some additional information on a research study that was conducted by McKinsey, where they talked about 10% of the publicly traded companies in the data set that they look at saw that their EBITDA, their earnings, had risen 10% during an economic downturn, while industry peers that were less resilient had lost 15% in earnings. So basically, you see that businesses that are better prepared can actually take advantage of opportunities and can kind of weather it better. Businesses that are less prepared could see that drop in revenue and in earnings. So we talked about it a little bit previously, but business continuity, you basically have a loss of trust with your customers if you're not open, if you're not communicating, you're in the supply chain. You have a loss of reputation, loss of your brand image. There's also like the monetary impacts where you're losing your customers, your insurance premiums are going up. You might lose government contracting. We talked about procurement. Also, any fines and legal fees. We'll get into that when we talk about like regulatory requirements. So there is like the non-tangible impacts to your business, and there's tangible impacts to your business from not being prepared for a disaster. And this is one of my favorite slides. Everybody, we always talk about being prepared. We all want to be the turtle in the little wagon. We don't want to be the rabbit, where you want to have that competitive advantage for your business. So business continuity, I'm here to say, is good for business. It can give you that competitive advantage. So if there's a hurricane and all your competitors are closed down and you're reopened, you're communicating with your customers or potential customers, that could basically give you a leg up. If you are closed for a significant amount of time, you could lose your customer to a competitor. And also, if you're working with large businesses or with the city of Miami as a contractor, or the state government, federal government, you could basically be in jeopardy of losing contracts because you're out, you're not basically responsive in terms of being in the supply chain. So definitely you want to pay attention to it also to get opportunities, but also maintain some of those relationships and opportunities that you have. And then just in terms of organizational resilience, you definitely want to build that up for your organization, that you can not just withstand and adapt, but you can basically weather those type of disasters like economic downturns, natural disasters, and you can maintain your core functions, integrity, your long-term viability. So you definitely want to have that organizational resilience kind of baked into your business. You can talk to a lot about the businesses that have that, like FedEx is one of them where they kind of do thrive on disasters. They have a lot of thought and planning that's gone into it. They're actually like pretty responsive and resilient in terms of their business, and that's actually built into their organization, their strategy, their business planning, those type of things. So what we want to do today is give you some real actionable steps. So I'm going to kind of get into like some of the first places you should start on disaster planning. The first thing I have to start is insurance. So the main response we always get from businesses is, I don't really need to worry about business continuity. I don't need to have a disaster plan. I've got insurance. We're all here in South Florida. We've all had to deal with insurance companies at some point, whether that's from a car accident, whether that's from like a hurricane, from something else with property that you have. Insurance is a partial solution. It's not going to replace your customers, nor is it going to cover all your losses. We've all experienced that firsthand. So as a business owner, you definitely need to shop for insurance. You basically need to take advantage of any free risk assessments that you can get, and you need to ask some key questions. Some key questions that we're sharing for you guys, and like we said, we'll give you a copy of this presentation, is what types of losses are excluded under your policy, which ones might be particularly relevant to your business or your industry. Do you have or do you need peak season endorsement on your inventory? And then would a blanket policy for like multiple locations be helpful to you? I know these are really good questions because we actually have had some clients in the past that said that their insurance company was like, "Where did you get these questions from?" And so we, have been through a couple of disasters. We've helped a number of businesses. So these are actually good questions. Some additional ones that you could ask is if you don't already have one, are you eligible for a business owner's policy? What's your deductible? How does it apply? Do you have a co-payment or co-insurance? And then is your personal property, your building coverage on the same basis, like replacement cost versus actual cash value? We've all seen the commercials, guys, where the insurance commercial is like, you think you're covered for this, but you're only covered for that. So really, it's important to reach out to your insurance company, take advantage of those risk assessments. Also, really understand your policy and what you have and what you don't have, because it's always a good time to update it, because that is very important in disasters. Most businesses are really utilizing insurance for different impacts and things like that. So you really want to make sure you have the best coverage and you kind of know what you know and what you don't know. We also included some information from the SBA. Shout out to the SBA. They have some good information on their website. I included the Insurance Institute that has some good info, some basics for small business insurance, and then also some information from Santa Clara University on business risk and insurance. In terms of the risk for your business, you more than anybody, like I know I'm an expert on this type of stuff, but I don't know your business as well as you do. So you're going to know your business, you're going to know your employees, you're going to know your locations better than anybody. So some key questions to ask is, have you done a risk assessment on what risks are more likely to threaten your business? For example, we're here in South Florida. Hurricanes are more likely to hit South Florida. Volcanoes, not so much. Earthquakes, not so much. I would say earthquakes, a good example is previously I was in Washington, D.C. You would never think you would have an earthquake in Washington, D.C. I was in Washington, D.C. when we had an earthquake. So that actually is something that you need to be mindful of and be prepared for. Where actually I had to walk all the way from the U.S. Capitol down towards the Pentagon because you couldn't catch the metro, you couldn't catch buses, and things like that. So you actually need to think about some things that are more likely to happen versus things that are less likely to happen. Also, if a disaster or an incident happens to your business or in your area, then you need to factor that into your planning moving forward. So now, if previously in Washington, D.C., you hadn't factored in earthquakes, you would need to include an earthquake in there just as like a remote possibility that you can factor in. Also, another thing that successful businesses do is conduct a tabletop exercise. You could basically test your response to specific risks. That's something where you can just get your team around a table. Most businesses will do it like on a Friday or something. Come in like a casual Friday, have the team around, talk about different incidents. How would you respond to it? We actually have some examples or some templates that you can use for a tabletop exercise. But there also are ones that you can look up now on the internet. You can obviously use AI for that. So there's different things that you can do to test your response, but you definitely want the key people related to your business in terms of those operations like HR, finance, procurement. You want them involved in the tabletop exercise so that you're kind of testing with those employees, so you can kind of see different aspects of that. You also want to do like a visual inspection of your business, walk around. It's a good time to do it for hurricane season. Go look around. Is there any damage pre-existing? Is there anything you need to be aware of? Is there anything you can take photos of so that you have like the before and the after? And you basically want to just focus on really basic steps that you can take today to better prepare your business against future disasters. In terms of your business, there's 4 things you need to think about, like who makes your business run. We've talked about employees. What makes your business run? Where does it run? And how does it run? So those are the 4 different buckets to look at. In terms of your operations, you want to look at what's critical, what's important, and what's non-essential. Because I guarantee you, if you have a hurricane, you're going to find out really quick what is non-essential, and you're going to focus on the critical or the important. And you do want to focus on what are your critical functions. How long can you withstand an interruption to that? Is it 24 hours? Is it 2 days? Is it 3 days? You really want to focus on those different functions and how long can you be down without having to have those up and running. You also want to think about your supply chain. Obviously, upstream, you want to talk about your suppliers. In the middle, you want to talk about your business, your employees, and then downstream, you want to talk about your customers. And then I'm a big believer, like your front line is your bottom line. So you really want to focus on your team, focus on your employees. So you want to maintain current employee contact information. Obviously, you have people that get married, people that move, people get a new cell phone, they get a new email address, they're not using Yahoo anymore. So you definitely want to make sure you have up-to-date employee contact information. You want to have up-to-date emergency contacts, like I mentioned. Some people get married, some people get divorced. Some people want to change the contacts. You want to have those up to date so that you can get a hold of somebody. Alternate means of communication. Obviously email, work email, personal email, messaging from your office. Some organizations have like a WhatsApp group that they can message during a disaster. You want to identify any special skills, any certifications that your team has, any military training, first aid CPR. Also, one of the biggest things I can tell you from like Hurricane Katrina, from COVID, is working with businesses on the like employees with their personal disaster plans. For example, is your employees, are they going to evacuate to Orlando? Are they going to go to Georgia? Are they going to shelter in place? Do they have childcare needs? Do they have pets, elderly relatives? Those are things that you want to work with your employees on now because you want to identify those type of things because that can impact your operations. If you have somebody that can't come back to work because there's no childcare, if you have employees that are caring for an elderly relative, also with the pets, obviously we know there's some shelters that are pet friendly, some shelters are not pet friendly, some hotels are pet friendly, some are not. So you do want to think about those type of things because it is a lot more difficult to worry about that as you're evacuating, you're loading up your car versus like, doing it like at your leisure, kind of like one task at a time. And also that was a big impact after Hurricane Katrina was businesses were actually had no damage or minimal damage. They were ready to get back up and running, but the business couldn't get back fully operational because the employees couldn't come back because they were caring for kids because the schools were out. So they were like basically taking care of their kids. So you basically want to focus on your personal recovery, your employees' recovery, and also your business recovery because those are very much intertwined. In terms of your business, you also want to look at your suppliers, your contractors. What is the likelihood that you're going to have customers in your physical business if a disaster occurs? You want to keep your communications open with your customers, obviously your phone lines, your email, website, social media. Monitor the internet and social media if there's any trending stories, because if it's of interest to you and your business, then more than likely it's of interest to your customers. So you can share information. We're here with the city of Miami today in the SBA. Maybe you see something on SBA disaster loans or home loans. Maybe you see something from the city of Miami that's of interest to you. You can share it on your social media. The customers would appreciate that. You want to keep your copy of your customer records in the cloud or off-site so that you don't have like everything in one location. And then you also want to have like an alternate work site which you can communicate to customers during recovery. I know we've all been through that during COVID and remote work, so we do have more options than we would previously. But you definitely want to, think through those type of things, like how could you run the business if you can't physically get into your location. I know that we do have the fire chief here as well, and from the city. Also, there are opportunities for you to coordinate with local police, with your fire department. There are opportunities for you to get inspections of your business or, just chat with them. So definitely don't be shy. If you are, working on a disaster plan or you do have some questions or something, those are things that you could reach out. Obviously, it's better to reach out to local emergency management officials when it's kind of blue skies like today and when there's not disasters happening. But there are some things that you can coordinate with those emergency professionals, just like you would with your insurance company. In terms of customers, like we mentioned, basically focus on, is anybody going to be in your business? Do you have the work site to communicate to business, to your customers? In terms of other contacts that I might not have mentioned, a good acronym is BAIL. BAIL is bankers, accountants, insurance agents, and lawyers. These are most of the folks that are very key in terms of like providing services to businesses that you would need to get in touch with. Obviously, your banker, in terms of if you have any loans or if you need a loan and things like that, your accountant to stay on top of your finances, insurance agent, have that contact information on your policy, and if you need to like submit a claim. Your lawyer might be important if you have any kind of regulatory impacts or anything requirements to make sure you're in compliance, or any other kind of legal issues that you might have after a disaster. We're obviously here in South Florida. We're used to having like a bag and box preparations. For the business, you would basically have your business box that's like any insurance policies, your lease, inventory lists, payroll records, bank statements, tax returns. Nowadays, it could be like a virtual business box, where you could have like a flash drive or something that you could put all that information on there. Definitely, like we mentioned, your employee contact information, your client list, your vendor list, any receipts that you have for like equipment, inventory, any insured items. The go bag is kind of what we normally put together. It's like first aid kit, cell phone charger, battery operated radio. We're here in Florida, battery operated fan, bottled water, flashlight and batteries. There are some other things you might want to include if you have anybody that has medical issues or any other type of consideration. Obviously, if you have kids, maybe you might want to, have things like Capri Suns or like snacks. So there's other things that you can add in there as well on the personal side. In terms of your records, so we did talk about your employee records, your client records. You want to identify any records that are going to be vital for those critical functions. You want to store it on site, have a second copy, utilize multiple media formats, back it up, because that data is no good to you if it's from like 2 years ago, from a year ago. You want stuff that's like, backed up. You want to save it again, because for example, if you're trying to save something, save it as a PDF. Sometimes things don't convert to a PDF. So you might have a file that's like not working. So you don't want to have like multiple backup formats, and also test it, download it, make sure it opens. And very important specifically to insurance and SBA is you want to have photographic records of your inventory, your furnishings, your fixtures, your equipment, anything that you think might get damaged, or anything you think you might want to put in an insurance claim or an SBA disaster loan on. You got to have like the before and after. You can't just say, trust me, this was not trashed before the hurricane or before the disaster. You basically want to take it where it's in good working order. Definitely your building, that your building didn't have like leaks already, didn't have like damage to the roof. You want to have all that information. That's good to save in that kind of virtual business box, where you can have that all backed up. You could have like a folder and just have that saved there, because that is information that insurance would need. Obviously, the SBA would need as well. In terms of those critical operations, it is going to be specific to your business, but some examples is like your payroll. People like getting paid, pre-disaster, post-disaster, any insurance claims, regulatory requirements, obviously accounts receivable. We talked about like equipment, any of your supplier information, contractor information, physical, like information specific to your building. How do you get in your facility? How do you get in your building? I do want to talk a little bit about regulatory requirements. The best example for this would be HIPAA. If you deal with any type of like personal health information, for those of you that do deal with HIPAA, it is a four-letter word. Basically, it lays out safeguards for anybody with, protected health information. It needs to be confidential, and have integrity, and be available. But there's been huge fines for folks that had health information that was like, hacked, health information left in a car, health information like in a disaster was lost. So you do need to be mindful of those type of regulatory requirements. And just like I said, basically you have to comply with those data security and business continuity standards. So for HIPAA, for example, and health information, you got to back it up electronically. You got to have business continuity plans, data restoration processes, and then you got to have those emergency operations planning and continuation of the processes related to that information. But that's just one example. It is a very high profile example because those are very large fines that you get for HIPAA violations. But there are other regulatory requirements depending on your business and the industry that you're in. Also, I do want to mention this for pandemics. We're all hoping that pandemics are in the rearview mirror. We don't have to worry about it. But just like I mentioned previously, for like an earthquake happens in your area or some other disaster, for pandemics, those used to be things that for business continuity professionals, we would not worry about pandemic planning. But now it has to be at least considered as part of your continuity planning. So the two biggest pieces of advice we can give you is you got to consider strong considerations to strengthening your e-commerce and your direct-to-consumer sales. If you're retail, if you're like a restaurant, because businesses that had e-commerce direct-to-consumer sales, along with the marketing to match it, they saw their sales skyrocket during COVID. Folks that were like traditional brick and mortar businesses, they struggled when there was like shelter in place and they were relying on foot traffic to come and keep their business afloat. Also on the marketing side, you got to consider where you have a one size fits all marketing strategy, but each locality had different restrictions, different shelters in place, different rules and regulations. So they basically would have an ad that would be not as nimble as it would versus it. So you got to ensure that your marketing strategy are agile, that you can quickly change your message to avoid additional costs or delays for that. So those are just some pandemic stuff to consider. I know that this did come up because folks were worried about Ebola and other things overseas. So definitely it is timely to mention it. And then also for COVID-19, the one good thing that came out of COVID was we were able to see from the federal government, from state governments, from county, city governments, and also industries, everybody had to put up like different rules and guidance for a pandemic. And so the good thing is a lot of those websites, you can still go in now and download, review, and save what those plans, those guidance are. So those are things that you don't have to wait for the mystery to be revealed about what was the guidance from this city or the federal government or from this industry. Those are things that are still available, less so than like right after COVID, but those are things that you can do some research and pull those together just to help you have those on hand just in case, we had to have any of those type of responses down the road. And then I did include the CDC website. They do have something up there for pandemic planning. And it was like a different, like a business checklist that's geared towards businesses. And then do want to do a shout out for organizations not exclusive to SBDC, but there are other organizations at the local level, at the state level, national level that can help you with creating a business continuity plan. If you don't need a full-blown business continuity plan, you can do some mini business continuity plans or checklists. So I did want to shout out basically City of Santa Monica. They have a really good template that's for small businesses that's on business continuity and recovery planning. So I did include the link up there. Also, disastersafety.org, they have some information up there. And then the Colorado SBDC, historically, they've had a really good full-blown business continuity book for small businesses that has like checklists and things you can print out, things you can fill out electronically. It is a little harder to find it, so I did include the link up there. They actually have like kind of an online course now, free of charge, but you can basically register and then you can take the course and then they will give you the business continuity guide afterwards. So I definitely shout out those resources if you're looking to get more detailed. I would mention though, we did give you the Colorado one is more comprehensive, has a lot of stuff that you can break out. The disaster safety one is a little bit smaller. And then the City of Santa Monica one, it is like pretty basic in terms of it. So those are like kind of mini plans. And then the Colorado one is more comprehensive. And then I did also want to just shout out some good apps that are good to get for your phone. There's obviously the Red Cross app that everybody's pretty familiar with. FEMA has a good app. Miami-Dade County has their Ready MDC app. Gas Buddy, I know a lot of folks have been using that more recently to find like, cheaper gas. That is very easy to find gas, after a hurricane. We all know the gas lines and kind of hunting around who has gas, who doesn't. So those are some good ones. Also, Storm Radar is one. It's from the Weather Channel. There's obviously NOAA hurricane trackers and other ones. And then Emergency Radio that gives you live access to EMS, police, fire. So those are a couple ones that are good to get on your phone now. On the business planning side, also did want to include the ready.gov has a business specific website, the Florida Division of Emergency Management. And then another shout out to SBA. They have a really good website specific to disaster preparedness. More locally, there is a state of Florida disaster website that's geared towards businesses. The city of Miami has a hurricane guide, so I did include it up there. Also, Miami-Dade County has their hurricane guide. And then for our center, we cover both Miami-Dade and also the Keys. So also did include the Monroe County hurricane guide as well. And then with that, I'll save some time for questions or anything else from our panel to share as well.
Hey, Brian, Graham Musser here, City of Miami. Thank you. That was a very comprehensive view of what to do for preparedness before a storm. I don't think you left much for questions there. You pretty much kind of nailed everything you said. I would say two things would be, well, let me start over. Preparedness for your business. Your physical structure is important. Make sure you have your plans in place, your generators are up and running. Make sure that your fire sprinklers and alarm panels are working. Now's the time to do so. Physical plans, hurricane plan, evacuation plan, and fire safety plans, all very important, and not just to write them, that everybody knows about them. All of your digital assets, and documents are stored electronically, so you have access to them and when you're working remotely. And then most importantly, your people. And then with the people are they taken care of at home so that they're ready to report to work when the doors are open again, hopefully. Alert Miami is a great tool where you'll get direction straight from the City of Miami and the Emergency Operations Center. You can sign up to Alert Miami by texting Alert Miami to 888-777. And that's where you'll get when we're shutting down schools, when we're doing evacuations, when we're having sandbag distribution sites, when we're opening up local points of distributions for ice and water. And the other thing would be the difference between 911 and 311 when we're in a storm. 911 is for emergencies, life-threatening emergencies only, especially when they're in the peak of the hurricane. When winds are going, 100 miles an hour, we're not sending rescuers out there, but we are queuing those emergencies. So as soon as it's safe to do so, we will send them out there. But 311 is an important underutilized tool. 311 is where you report flooding, power outage, missing dogs. I mean, whatever issue that you have that you believe the city can assist you with, all those get categorized and cataloged within the Emergency Operations Center. And we start sending out the appropriate agencies or authorities to go out and start mitigating those incidents that you have logged there. If you didn't call it in on 311, we don't know about it until our CUT teams, our life safety assessment teams are out in the field and bringing that information back to us. So if you can help us out in real time by calling 311 and giving us those operational updates, I'm not saying go out and drive the streets. Just walk around your home or your business, see what's there, take care of your own property, and notify us of what you see.
And I would mention that's a great observation, Grant, because previously I have been in the EOC for the county and kind of supported the county's operations. And I know a lot of that information sharing is really helpful for businesses in terms of knowing like where do you guys need to focus your attention, what are needs, but also where there's opportunities where business has things that you guys need. So that is like really helpful to kind of be connected with the city and the county in terms of like information sharing.
Yes, exactly.
Mhm.
And getting the businesses back up and running is a priority. It's not the top one because life safety always comes first. But
Mhm.
getting the economy back up and running so that it can support the citizens in their time of need is definitely a priority within our emergency operations center.
Mhm.
Brian,
Yes.
I wanted to, you talked a little bit about preparedness and being competitive, right? So I wanted to cite two great examples of how
Mhm.
small businesses were prepared and were competitive in the sense that, for example, for Hurricane Irma, we had a situation where we were looking desperately for a caterer for the EOC. Then it turned into something way larger where we are having to feed, constituents, the elderly population and other populations that were undergoing, extreme, they had small children, they were in, areas that were either flooded or things like that. So we had all of our catering companies on contract were closed. They were affected. They no electricity. There was one catering company that was prepared and had generators and what have you, and they became our caterer. And it became very lucrative for them. The only people they were serving was the city of Miami. That's how much volume we had. So that's a great example on how being prepared can also make you very competitive. The other example was during COVID. At the beginning, there was a frenzy for PPE and things like that. We found that local ACE hardware stores had PPE and nobody was tapping into that. And we started sending our folks to all the different ACE stores, calling and making sure that they had gloves and other things. So that's another example on, being a small business. You can be, if you're prepared, you can be very competitive.
Mhm. I have two quick, I think that's great examples. I had two quick notes on that. Number one, another great business example, and I think she's shared it publicly, was Half Moon Empanadas. Everybody knows Half Moon Empanadas, especially if
Mhm.
you've been through the airport or we have it at the FIU campus. But Pilar with Half Moon Empanadas, they did pivot during COVID and they were actually offering meals to seniors. So that because they basically have a lot of the components between beans and rice and everything else. So they were able to basically shift into more like that type of opportunity, like you said, on the catering side, and they were able to help their business stay afloat. The second thing is Jesus is going to thank me for this, but anytime we have a hurricane, people always wait until after the hurricane to say, "Hi, how can I do business with FEMA?" And they don't know, and a lot of you guys can attest to that. I see Eileen mentioning it, but those are pre-positioned contracts. Those are things that are done before the disaster. So if we're recording this, but if you guys want to do business with FEMA, with anybody else that's emergency management, start looking that up now and get on the list and do all your certifications and do all your registrations, because those are things where if you're kind of coming later, there are opportunities that do come up later on, but most of those contracts are pre-positioned. So you definitely want to like kind of do your legwork beforehand. Um, so I'd want to throw this two out.
Yeah, I'll just add to that. Last year we did something, and it reminded me when you said blue skies versus gray skies with the state of Florida.
Mhm.
Really getting the small businesses, and we will be hosting it again this year. We're just working on a date, to become a vendor. So if and when, the small business has the opportunity to become, kind of on that cycle so that they can, take advantage and work and get some contracts out of the state, during that time. So I'll
Mhm.
keep you
I
guys
see.
posted on that.
That's awesome. And I do see we had a question that's how do you get signed up for the contractor list with the city of Miami? So that was like a timely question.
So, when a disaster hits, it is, reimbursements are from FEMA. So all of our contracts have to abide by federal procurement guidelines. And also, there are federal contract terms and conditions, et cetera. But I put a link to how to register with a vendor. I'll also go ahead and put my email and you can reach out to me. We do have contracts, we have pools. Just, reach out to me and let me know what you do. And I can go ahead and give you some guidance.
Cool. Jesus, any other questions that we're missing?
Like I said, this is a recorded webinar, so all participants will be receiving today's presentation, the links that our esteemed panelists have provided. And then at the same time, if there's anything that we can do to assist you with your small business needs, we're more than happy to assist you, to connect you with the appropriate channels to scale your business as well. And then, yes, and I'll be also including Annie's email and on the supplier information, so like that if there's any additional items, by all means, I'll be more than happy to connect you to the right channels.
Yeah, and if I had to give you guys kind of like, well, I guess any closing thoughts from Grant, any closing thoughts from Annie, Melissa, Eileen, anything from you guys? Any words of wisdom?
What I will say is that we have amazing resources starting with the SPDC. And there's tons of consultants, so you don't need to do this alone. Your taxpayer dollars are already paid for that. So reach out. They're extremely responsive. They have great, counselors. So, don't wait for when you're in it. We saw that a lot in the pandemic where, the small business maybe wasn't paying themselves payroll and then they couldn't take advantage of PPP. Like, make sure that you have everything in line so that, you can take advantage of, the opportunity when it arises. So that would be my parting words. Yes.
Melissa, anything from the mayor's office?
Just to say that we're here as another resource. We can connect you to different organizations. So anything you need or have doubts, you can always reach out to us and we'll try to connect you to the appropriate person or department, but just use us as an extra resource.
Great. And Annie or Grant, anything on your end?
I think on just, preparation is key. I know Eileen said it best, you don't need to do it alone. Make sure that you have checklists help. Make sure that, this presentation was pretty spot on how to prepare. Take advantage that it's going to be available to you and use it. Don't wait for the moment that a hurricane watch is being issued to start doing your preparation. Prepare now, and that'll help you be more resilient and bounce back quicker than if you didn't prepare.
I couldn't agree more with Annie. I think preparedness is key, but also communication is key. And getting communication from reliable sources, not from social media that is not reliable, or from a friend or a neighbor next door. Sign up for Alert Miami. Again, it's 888-777. You get information directly from the EOC and what's happening, especially when even the power is out. And stay indoors during a storm. And once you're outside, wait until it's safe to do so after the storm to start driving around the streets. They're flooded. There's a lot of unknown disasters that are out there that you can't see underneath the flooded waters. So stay home until told that it's safe to go out. Thank you.
That's great advice. And the last thing I'll give you guys is just words of wisdom. First off, positivity. We're not going to have any hurricanes. We're going to be good. I know we've been lucky the last few years. But definitely you want to be prepared. Don't overthink it, because most of the business owners, like I personally work with businesses on business continuity plan. I've helped them to write like a really large scale business continuity plan. Most businesses just need like a basic checklist. They need contact lists. They need information and resources like we're talking about today. So for me, don't overthink it, guys. Don't feel like you have to write like this huge business continuity plan and then kind of get paralyzed by indecision. Really focus on those basic steps that you can do. And there's a lot of organizations out there that have great resources. Definitely, we'll send you guys a copy of this presentation. We got some great links. Please follow up with all of our panelists and their information and their resources. And then definitely stay tuned in terms of information, if we do have a hurricane or any other type of disasters.
I did have one of the things really not related to hurricanes, but I did want to mention, since we have some small businesses that are on the line with us, the SBA for the 250th anniversary of America. We have something that's called the Patriot Pitch. I know I've sent it to you guys, and it's an opportunity for small businesses to really basically win free dollars. It's a $1 million pool prize. There'll be 10 finalists. The deadline for that is June 10th. I'm going to send more information to Jesus so that maybe he could include that in case. And so, really it's an opportunity to, the kind of the criteria is to strengthen America's competitiveness, pitching above its weight, impact on quality of jobs and fundamental, execution. But that deadline is fast approaching. It is in 10 days, and the finalists will be notified July 2026. So just want to
That's
share that.
awesome.
Yeah.
So that's a good reward. That's a good thing to end on. It's like
Yes.
free opportunity.
Free money.
Yes.
Who doesn't want it?
Yeah. There you
And I
go.
would love for them to be from South Florida. I was telling Jesus earlier, trying to get our winners to be from here.
Yeah, we're on the same page for that. So
Yeah.
we'll send that along with the presentation.
Awesome. Thank you.
Just take care, everybody. Have a great hurricane season. Very, very slow hurricane season, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Fingers
Bye-bye.
crossed.
Take
Thank
care.
you all so much.
Got
Thank
yours.
you.